Everyone has known someone like this, wealthy, successful, talented, someone everyone admires. Everyone thinks, with someone like that, life will always be brilliant. They'll never fail. Everyone says, money buys everything. With status, you'll never fall. But today, I'm going to tell you about my friend from college, someone who shattered everything people believed. I first met him nearly 10 years ago in a college lecture hall. Every time he walked into the room, all eyes turned to him. Sharp features, piercing eyes, a rare smile. Girls whispered behind his back. Guys silently envied him. Just 3 years after graduation, at age 28, he owned his own company with millions of dollars in monthly revenue. A 45th floor penthouse with an ocean view, 3 cars in the garage, a Patek Philippe watch that never left his wrist. Things people work their entire lives to touch, he had while still very young. The times I went for coffee with him, I noticed he spoke little. He just sat there, listening, observing with eyes cold as ice. When he did speak, his voice was deep, decisive. Even with friends, he maintained a certain distance, but that very distance made people want to get closer. I heard people talk about him during the toughest market years, when businesses were going bankrupt left and right. The contracts he signed were always transparent down to every number. The promises he made were always kept on time. In a world full of tricks, he was the rare person whose partners didn't need a lawyer sitting beside them when signing. And I witnessed it myself. Anyone facing difficulties, he'd help without asking. Anyone needing startup capital, he'd transfer money immediately. No paperwork needed, just a promise. Friends calling at 3 a.m., he'd still answer and ask, "What do you need?" Until one day, these very things became the knife that stabbed him in the back. Life truly wasn't like a dream. The people he trusted most stabbed him in the back. The people he called brothers deceived him and pushed him into the abyss. And in one night, everything collapsed. Everything. From the peak of glory, he fell into the depths of despair. From someone admired, he became someone scorned. From a powerful boss, he became a hired hand earning pennies. Everyone thought, it's over. Someone like him can never stand up again. But they were wrong, because he discovered a philosophy from Japan, a philosophy that doesn't teach you to change your entire life overnight, but only teaches you to change 1% each day. I know this sounds too simple, too slow, too unimpressive, but that's exactly the point. In today's video, I'll tell you the true story of my friend, from peak to abyss, and how he climbed back up, not with one miraculous leap, but with thousands of tiny steps. This story will show you, you don't need to change your life in one day. You only need to change 1% today. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel, hit like, and especially comment to let me know. What's one habit you most want to change in your life? Because at the end of this video, I'm going to challenge you, a 14-day challenge that could change the entire trajectory of your life. And now, let me take you into the story of a man who died and was reborn, not by magic, but by 1% each day. Part 1. Drifting into darkness. I remember being invited to his penthouse one weekend evening. A 2,000 square foot space, warm lighting illuminating the luxurious interior. But there was only one solitary figure sitting by the window. Him, with a long dining table now holding just one plate and one glass alone at the far end. Other evenings, I heard people say he'd sit by the glass window looking out at the city lights, the bottle beside him gradually emptying with each passing hour. Phone on the table, not ringing once. Not a single message from those he once called friends. People still saw him wearing expensive suits to the office every morning. The Patek Philippe still on his wrist, leather shoes still gleaming. But his eyes were empty, soulless, like an expensive wax figure without a soul. He still sat in the director's chair, signing documents, approving files. But the movements were mechanical, no longer lit by passion. Like a corpse moving by habit, no longer knowing what he was doing or why. Material success still surrounded him. Money in accounts, cars in the garage, a luxury apartment. But inside his chest was a massive emptiness, a black hole that nothing, no one could fill. Why was it like this? I heard the story. The people he trusted most, those he called brothers, had stabbed him in the back. They didn't attack from the front honorably. They chose the moment when his back was turned, when his heart was open, when he trusted completely. They exploited every moment he shared, every business secret he confided during late-night drinking sessions. That information was memorized, documented, sold to competitors. The value of trust they calculated in cash. In the darkest night, when he needed a helping hand, those very people held the torch that burned everything down. They sat together, raised their glasses, laughed, celebrated their victory on the ruins of an empire built by the man who had once saved their lives. And him? He always believed in the good in people. That was both his strength and his fatal weakness. Believing that if you're good to others, they'll be good back. Believing that loyalty matters more than profit. The contracts he signed didn't need lawyers to review carefully because we're brothers. The loans he gave didn't need collateral paperwork because we trust each other. Promises mattered more than written contracts. He believed this for 10 years. His kindness ultimately became the weapon others used to attack him. Every time he helped, they noted it to know where the weaknesses were. Every time he trusted, they prepared the next, more fatal blow, until he had nothing left to lose. And then came the price to pay. The company went bankrupt by court order one morning in March. Assets were auctioned to pay debts, one by one. The luxurious 45th floor penthouse I'd once been invited to now had someone else's name on the deed. The luxury cars in the garage, the expensive watches, the designer suits, all had to be sold. Buyers paid dirt cheap prices, knowing full well he was desperate, in dire need. Things that were once his pride now sold for less than 1/10 of their original value. In the end, only a small suitcase remained that I saw when he moved out. A few sets of clothes, one pair of shoes, and a soul shattered into pieces. From having everything to having nothing in less than a year. From a 2,000 square foot ocean view penthouse, he moved to a 150 square foot damp rental room in a distant suburban district, located in the basement of an old building where sunlight never reached. I only heard about it secondhand, not daring to visit for fear of embarrassing him. Where walls were peeling with yellowed wallpaper turned the color of damp earth. Fluorescent lights flickering all night, crackling as if about to burn out. Loud noises from neighboring rooms, arguing, crying, screaming, echoing through the paper-thin walls. Every night, as he later told me, he sat on a bed that creaked with every turn, looking at the water-stained ceiling and asking himself, who am I? Where am I? Was everything that just happened even real? And the worst part wasn't losing money, losing the house, losing the cars. The worst part was that he no longer believed in his own abilities. Every time he tried to do something, a voice in his head would whisper, "What can you even do? You've already failed. You're just a loser." Looking at successful people on social media, he felt the distance was as vast as between sky and abyss. They are them, and I'm just a loser who can never rise up. From confident and proud, he became someone afraid of every decision, afraid to talk to strangers, afraid to look people in the eye for fear they'd see his failure. Every morning, waking up feeling, I'm useless, I'm a burden. Every night asking himself, is there any reason to continue? Yet, humans have something strange. When you've hit rock bottom, when you have nothing left to lose, sometimes you find one last glimmer of hope. Not grand hope, but just a tiny question. Can I try one last time? And he tried. Part 2. Hope. After days and months drowning in despair, he poured all his remaining strength into knocking on doors of every company, every office he'd once partnered with. He sent hundreds of resumes, each email carefully polished, each introduction rewritten multiple times. He begged old acquaintances for referrals, people who once called him boss. He ran from one interview to another, wearing his old suit again, polishing his shoes, trying to regain the appearance of a businessman. He answered difficult questions, explained his past, struggled with the doubtful eyes of recruiters. He tried to convince them that he still had value, could still contribute, was still a decent person. But no one wanted to hire someone who'd gone bankrupt. No one wanted to risk hiring someone with a scandal. Recruiters politely thanked him, then rejected him right after Googling his name. "We'll be in touch." But the call never came. Hope flared in his eyes each time he received an interview invitation, then dimmed with each rejection email. 3 months passed, hundreds of job applications, not a single acceptance. He changed direction. "If no one will hire me, I'll create my own work." He borrowed money everywhere, from distant friends to online acquaintances. He scraped together a small amount of capital, meager but enough to start. He created a new business plan, a more modest plan, more realistic, learning from old mistakes. He convinced a few acquaintances to invest, promising transparency, promising to work twice as hard. He worked from morning to night, not taking a single day off, believing he just needed one more chance. He met with customers, pitched each product, bowing lower than ever before. But the market was harsh to someone without a network, without credibility. Customers heard his name and shook their heads. Partners refused cooperation from the first meeting. Good products, but no one believed. Promising projects, but no one dared to bet. 6 months passed, capital dwindling. Investors started demanding their money back. They called, texted, some even showed up in person. They turned their backs, calling him a scammer for the second time. He had one last path. He began collecting evidence against those who'd betrayed him. Old emails, messages, carelessly signed contracts. He prepared a thick file, spending an entire month organizing, marking, taking notes. He met with lawyers, presented his story, showed evidence. He sued those who'd deceived him, believing justice would be served. He fought in court, defending himself because he couldn't afford a good lawyer. He waited for the verdict for months, going to court every day, sitting in the waiting room, hoping for a fair outcome. But they had the best lawyers, money to drag the case out indefinitely. They filed endless procedures, requested postponements, supplemented evidence. He didn't have enough money to hire good lawyers, didn't have the strength to sustain a legal battle. His evidence was refuted, deemed insufficient. Finally, the court dismissed the case. Insufficient evidence, statute of limitations expired, couldn't prove fraudulent intent. 3 times. 3 times he stood up. 3 times he fell deeper. Each failure took him one step further from the starting point. More debt, worse health, self-belief fading. He learned a painful lesson. Great effort doesn't always lead to great results. Sometimes, the harder you try, the more rushed, the more desperate, the easier it is to fail. And this time, he truly gave up. He accepted odd jobs to survive day by day. Waking at 5 a.m. to hand out flyers at intersections, standing in the sun, handing papers to passers-by. Most didn't look, tossing them straight into trash cans, but he had to distribute 1,000 to earn 200,000 dong. At noon, he worked as a delivery driver, riding a beat-up motorbike, delivering food, climbing stairs floor by floor, knocking on doors, handing over orders, bowing in thanks. Some gave 10,000 dong tips, others cursed him for being 5 minutes late due to traffic. Evenings, he worked security for an office building, standing at the gate, checking entry cards. People who once called him boss now walked past, not recognizing him in a wrinkled security uniform. Hands that once signed million-dollar contracts now held a flashlight and logbook. No more hope, no more plans, no more future. Just surviving day by day, one day, then another. I completely lost touch with him. Heard he was living somewhere in the suburbs, doing odd jobs, not wanting to see anyone from his past. I'd thought about finding him, but was afraid of causing him more pain. I thought the story would end there. Someone once brilliant, now fading into obscurity. A sad story, like so many other sad stories. But life, sometimes, has unexpected turns. Part 3. The Encounter. And on a rainy night in July, he sat under an overpass, sheltering from rain after his night security shift. Clothes soaked through, holding a piece of stale bread bought that afternoon. dark thoughts in his head. Should he end it all today? 35 years old, nothing left, no one left, no reason to continue. Right then, an old man appeared. He too was sheltering from rain, sitting down under the bridge, a few meters away. He said nothing, just opened a small backpack, took out a towel and a small lunchbox. He handed him the warm towel. "Dry yourself off, catching cold isn't good." He looked at the man, an old man about 70 years old, Japanese features, kind smile. "Thank you, sir." He dried his face, dried his hands. The old man opened the lunchbox, divided it in half, offered half to him. "Eat. An empty stomach can't think good thoughts." They sat in silence, eating under the sound of rain. Then the old man asked, "What are you thinking about?" He flinched. "How do you know?" "I've been on this earth 70 years. I can see the eyes of someone who wants to give up." He remained silent. The old man didn't ask further, just said, "Would you like to hear a story?" He nodded. "Why not? The night was long anyway. I was once someone like you, had a company, money, status. 40 years ago in Tokyo, I was director of a construction company. Then I lost everything too, also betrayed, also thought about suicide, standing on a 15th floor rooftop, looking down at Tokyo's nighttime streets." He looked up. "Then what happened?" "Then I met my teacher, an old monk at a nearby temple. The teacher told me one thing. You don't need to change your entire life in one night. You only need to change 1% tomorrow." I didn't understand. The teacher said, "It took 40 years to build this self. How can 40 days destroy it? Kaizen, continuous improvement, 1% each day." He shook his head. 1%? I need to change my entire life." The old man smiled gently. "That's exactly why you failed. You're trying to change 100% in one day. No one can do that. The teacher gave me a simple task. Drink 1 glass of water every morning. That's all, for 2 weeks. Do nothing else." "That's all?" He felt ridiculous. "That's all. I thought it was too simple, but I did it. And after 2 weeks, I realized I kept my promise to myself. For the first time in months, I proved something, even if it was just drinking water." Then the teacher added one more small habit, then another. 5 years later, I was a completely different person. Rain still falling. The old man stood up, preparing to leave. He left him a small piece of paper. "Here's the address of a coffee shop, tomorrow at 7 a.m. If you want to try, go there. Just do one thing. Drink 1 glass of water, then leave. That's all." He held the paper, watching the old man disappear into the rain curtain. He sat back down, looking at the wet paper in his hand. 1% each day. Ridiculous. But inside, something stirred. A tiny question. "Can I drink 1 glass of water?" The next morning, 7 o'clock, he went to the coffee shop. The old man was already sitting there, smiling kindly. Handed him a glass of filtered water. "Drink." He drank. "Now go. Come back tomorrow." He was confused. "That's all?" "That's all." The first 2 weeks, he did only one thing. Each morning, go to the shop, drink 1 glass of water, leave. Simple to the point of absurdity. But by day 14, he realized he'd kept his promise 14 days straight. For the first time in years, he proved to himself he could do something. The old man said, "Now add one more small habit. Each morning, after drinking water, write down one thing you're grateful for. Just 1 sentence. That's all." The first week, he didn't know what to write. Grateful for what when I have nothing? But the old man gently said, "Can you breathe? Can you see the sun? That's something to be grateful for." Gradually, he began to see. Grateful for morning sunlight, grateful for a meal with meat, grateful for breathing. Month 2 added 5 minutes of meditation each morning. Month 3 added 10 push-ups. Month 4, read 10 pages of a book. Each habit so small it couldn't be refused, but accumulated together, they began to change him, not changing circumstances, but changing perspective. 6 months passed. He still worked as a delivery driver, still worked security. But his attitude was different. Delivering wasn't shameful anymore, but an opportunity to observe how people lived, how they organized their time. Security work wasn't humiliating anymore, but time to read books, to learn. Writing what he was grateful for each morning changed his brain. From someone who only saw lack, he began to see what he had. Not much, but not nothing. Health remained, hands remained, mind remained, and most importantly, will remained. He no longer resented those who'd betrayed him, not because they deserved forgiveness, but because he deserved freedom. Resentment only imprisoned himself, didn't hurt others. The old man had taught, forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. Month 9. He began to control his emotions. No more explosive anger, no more impulsive decisions. Morning meditation taught him to observe emotions without being swept away. Customer cursing because delivery was late. He observed the anger rising, then quietly apologized, explained, didn't argue. People looking down on him for being a delivery driver. He observed the pain inside, then reminded himself, my value isn't defined by others. Each day keeping small promises to himself, he proved he could control, not controlling the outside world, but controlling the inner world. And that was true power. The first year passed. Delivery work was no longer temporary work. He began learning every tiny detail, observing how logistics companies operated, how they optimized routes, how they managed employees, how they handled complaints. He read logistics books every evening, learned English through free apps every morning, observed, took notes, thought. No rushing, no grand ambitions, just learning day by day. Then one day, he made a suggestion to his boss about optimizing delivery routes, a small suggestion, saving 30 minutes per day for each driver. Boss tried it, effective, then asked for more input, then applied it company-wide. He got a 20% raise. Value doesn't lie in position. Value lies in attitude, in learning, in ability to contribute, and he'd proven he had value. Month 15, boss called him into the office. You work hard, are responsible, always on time. The company needs someone to manage the delivery team. Would you like to try? He hesitated. But I'm just a delivery driver. Boss smiled. I don't need someone with credentials. I need someone trustworthy. And I trust you. From delivery driver to team leader. Not because he was the best, but because he was the most consistent. Arriving on time for 15 months straight, not missing a day except when seriously ill. Every promise kept, every deadline met. Gradually, people saw this was someone trustworthy. The old man once said, credibility isn't built in one day. It's built from thousands of days of keeping your word. Year 2. He was now branch operations director, not by luck, but because he'd proven leadership ability through each small decision. He wasn't cold like before. He listened to employees, understood what difficulties they faced, helped them solve small problems, didn't give dictatorial orders, but discussed, listened, decided together. Branch revenue increased 40% in the first 6 months he was director. Not because he was smarter than others, but because he built a team that trusted each other. A team where everyone felt respected, heard, developed. More importantly, he was no longer the old version. No longer wealthy and arrogant, no longer cold and distant. He was warm, humble, understanding. He had died and been reborn as a better person. I met him again one afternoon at the end of year 3. He invited me to the logistics company office. Not a huge company, but reputable. He sat in the director's office, but no longer had that distant look from before. Are you well? I asked, still couldn't believe it. He smiled. Good, very good. Never been this good. But how? An old Japanese man, a rainy night, a glass of water, and 1% each day. I didn't understand. He told me everything. From that July night, from the old man, from the first glass of water to today. 3 years, 1% each day, 1,095 days, each day a little better. Accumulated together, I'm a completely different person. He was no longer the wealthy businessman of years past, salary not even a tenth of his peak. But he was happy, truly happy. Not fake happiness from money, but happiness from knowing who he was, knowing what he was doing, and being proud of the person he'd become. What I lost wasn't a curse, he said. It was a gift. It taught me what success never could: humility, gratitude, and perseverance. Part 4, the final message. We sat in a coffee shop near his office, not a fancy place, just a normal sidewalk cafe. But he drank that glass of iced milk coffee with more satisfaction than all the expensive wines from before. "You know," he said, "back then I thought success was having money, cars, houses, power. Now I know success is sleeping soundly every night, waking up without fearing the new day, looking in the mirror and being proud of the person you see." I nodded, but still had many questions. "So, those people who betrayed you?" The old man told me one thing: forgiveness isn't for them, it's for yourself. He looked into the distance. "I don't need them to apologize. I forgive, not because they deserve it, but because I deserve freedom. Resentment only imprisons yourself, doesn't hurt others. But they're still living well, aren't they? Maybe, but that's their life, not mine. I can't change the past. I can only change how I react to that past." He smiled. "And you know what? I thank them." Thank them? Without them, I'd still be that wealthy, arrogant person, cold, distant. I'd never know how strong I could be, never learn humility, never understand others' suffering. They gave me the greatest gift, the opportunity to be reborn. We were silent for a moment. Then he continued. "I used to think failure was the enemy. Now I know, giving up is the real enemy. I didn't fail because I was betrayed. I failed because afterward, I chose to give up. 3 attempts, 3 failures. I thought I was out of options. But actually, I was just going the wrong way." Wrong way? I tried to change 100% in one day. Tried to get everything back immediately. Like a drowning person thrashing around. The more you thrash, the deeper you sink. The old man taught me, don't thrash. Float. 1% each day. That's all. He paused, looking at me. "You know, in this life, no one can save you except yourself." The old man showed me the path. But the walking was mine. Every morning at 7, I could choose not to go to the cafe. Could choose to keep sleeping, keep complaining. But I chose to go. Chose to drink the water. Chose to keep my promise. "And now I want to tell you something." His voice more serious. "Everyone has their own rainy July night, a moment of hitting rock bottom, a moment of thinking about giving up, and that's not the end. That's the beginning. When you hit rock bottom, when you lose everything, when you think there's nothing left to lose, that's when you're truly free. Free to choose. Free to change. Free to become who you want to be." He picked up the glass of water on the table. "You see this glass of water? It's just a glass of water. But to someone dying of thirst, it's life. The issue isn't whether the glass is big or small. The issue is whether you drink it, whether you keep your promise, whether you continue." I asked, "So if someone is in the situation you were in back then, what would you say?" He thought for a moment. "I'd say, don't try to change your entire life in one day. You can't do it. No one can. Instead, choose the smallest habit, so small you can't refuse it. Drink 1 glass of water, walk for 5 minutes, read 1 page of a book. That's all. Then do it every day. No breaks, no skipping. However bad that day is, however tired you are, do it. Because you're not doing it for results. You're doing it to prove to yourself you can keep your word. And after 2 weeks, when you've kept it for 14 days straight, you'll realize something magical. You can trust yourself, and when you can trust yourself about one small thing, you can trust yourself about anything. But what if I fail midway? I asked. Then get up. The next day, start again. No self-blame, no self-hatred. Just simply start again. Failing one day doesn't mean it's over. It just means today you learned a lesson. He smiled. You know how many times I failed in those 3 years? There were days I forgot to drink water, days I couldn't write anything to be grateful for, days I wanted to give up everything. But the next day, I started again, and that's what matters. In this life, he added, things don't change because of one big decision. Life changes because of 10,000 small decisions. Each morning you wake up. What do you choose? Choose to stay in bed or get up. Choose to complain or take action. Choose resentment or forgiveness. Choose to give up or continue. Each small choice, accumulated together, creates who you are. And after many years, you look back. You won't recognize yourself, not because of magic, but because of 1% each day. Before parting, he gave me a small piece of paper. On it was written, "In this life, suffering doesn't destroy people. Suffering creates people. And the greatest people aren't those who never fall, but those who always get up." Keep it, he said. One day, when you face your own rainy July night, remember, that's not the end. That's the beginning. I looked at him, the man who once had everything, lost everything, and now had everything back, but in a completely different way. Not richer, but happier. Not stronger, but more peaceful. Not more successful, but more complete. And I understood. Sometimes, losing everything isn't a tragedy. It's a gift life gives to those brave enough to be reborn. In this life, it's never too late to start again. Just need one small decision, one small habit, one small promise to yourself, and 1% each day. That's all. Closing and the 14-day challenge. That's the story of my friend, the story of a man who fell from peak to abyss, then climbed back up, not with one miraculous leap, but with thousands of tiny steps, not by luck, not by magic, but by 1% each day, persisting for 3 years, 1,095 days, each day a little better, accumulated together, a completely new life. And now, I want to ask you one question. Are you in your own rainy July night? Maybe you haven't failed as big as him, but you're failing in your own way. Failing at work, failing in relationships, failing in health, failing to keep promises to yourself. Maybe you've tried many times. Extreme diets, but quit after 1 week. Crazy gym workouts, but stopped after 1 month. Reading motivational books, but nothing changed. Watching success videos, but staying in the same place. And you start thinking, I can't do it. I'm weak. I lack willpower. But that's not it. You're not weak. You're just using the wrong method. You're trying to change 100% in 1 day, something no one can do. You're thrashing like a drowning person. The more you thrash, the deeper you sink. You need to stop, float, and swim 1 stroke at a time. 1% each day, that's all. Today, I want to challenge you. A 14-day challenge that could change your entire life trajectory. Not a grand challenge. Not, I'll lose 10 kilo. Not, I'll succeed. Not, I'll change my entire life. But the smallest possible challenge. A habit so small, you can't refuse it. Step 1. Choose the smallest habit. Not, I'll gym for 1 hour. But, I'll do 5 push-ups. Not, I'll read 1 book, but I'll read 1 page. Not, I'll eat healthy, but I'll drink 1 glass of water every morning. If you feel this is too easy, it won't work. Exactly right. If you feel I can do this even on my worst day, perfect. The goal isn't to achieve results immediately. The goal is to keep your promise to yourself. Step 2. Do it for 14 days straight. Nothing extra. No intensifying. No rushing. Just do that one small thing every day. 14 days straight. No breaks. Day 1, you do it. Day 2, you do it. Day 3, 4, 5, today 14, and you'll prove to yourself, I can keep my word. Step 3, comment right now. Comment below this video, one smallest habit you'll start tomorrow. Don't say, I'll succeed. Say, I will specific action. Examples, I will drink 1 glass of water every morning. I will do 5 push-ups every evening. I will write 1 grateful sentence every day. I will read 1 page before bed. Writing it, chucker public commitment, chucker 90% higher chance of following through. My promise. 2 weeks later, I'll come back to this comment section. I'll read every comment. I'll see who kept their word, who drank their first glass of water, who did their first 5 push-ups. And I'll share your transformation stories in the next video. You know what's different between successful people and failures? Not talent, not luck, not starting point, but the ability to keep promises to yourself, day after day. Whether that day is good or bad, whether people are watching or not, keep your word. Continue. Don't give up. And you? Can you do it? I believe you can. Because if my friend, who once lay under a bridge, soaked, desperate, thinking about giving up, could do it, then you can too. Don't need to be perfect. Just need to start. Don't need to change your entire life tomorrow. Just need to change 1% today. If this video means something to you, if this story touches your heart, please, 1, like this video, so I know you watched till the end and are ready to change. 2, subscribe to the channel to follow the journey of those who commented and started changing. 3, share the video with someone you think needs to hear this story. Maybe they're in their own rainy July night, and this video could be their old Japanese man. 4, comment your smallest habit. Don't skip this step. Write it down. Commit. Begin. Once again, you don't need to change your life in one day. You only need to change 1% today. Tomorrow, another 1%. Day after, another 1%. 365 days later, you'll be 365% better, and you'll look back, won't recognize yourself, not because of magic, but because you had enough courage to begin and enough perseverance to continue. Remember, life doesn't change because of one big decision. Life changes because of 10,000 small decisions, and the first decision starts tomorrow. See you at the best version of yourself, 1% each day. That's all.